I mean, you have different perspectives, you have different senses, but it's a fair point. Look, you're a board member. You're not the principal. You're not a statistician. Well, some people have statistical backgrounds, but your job is going to be to ask some questions, right? So we're just trying to set you up in a position so that you can ask questions when you have a dashboard. Do you know what the goal is? Do you know where you are to that goal, where your school is to that goal? And do you know what they're going to do when they're not on track? Remember, those are the 3 vital indicators. So let's just take a look at the next one, which is number 3. What's different here? Tell me if this makes sense to you or not.
Future goals for the next quarter.
What's the difference here?
I mean, now we have more set goals for the remaining 3 quarters.
Great. So as you look at the data now, there are set goals for that first quarter, there are goals for the next quarter, and the next quarter, and the next quarter. How does this information look to you now? We still have these same questions. Is this a rigorous goal? And you definitely have to ask questions around that, right? What is this goal? Where did you get the goal from? What is the data you based it on? Is 75% good enough? Should we be looking at other schools that are like us or better? What have we accomplished in the past? These are all great questions, right? For around the goals. But now the school has thought out, they have goals of where they are and where they want to be. What is this data telling you?
That they met their goals for ELA and math. They could probably be a little more ambitious for both. They're doing really well in math, and science and social studies is falling by the wayside. But
do the teachers have enough professional development or the tools they need in science and social studies?
That's a great question. Like, why you set a goal, right? And it doesn't even seem like that high of a goal right now. 20% of your kids passing the first one. Why is it 11 versus 20? And that was the goal you guys set, right? Do they have all the resources they need to pass that class? What's going on? What do you think? I'm not asking what you think. I'm just asking a question you could pose, right? I mean, if I was looking at this, I'd be like, oh, I'm a little concerned about at least those areas. I'd want to know more. Because does it look like they're on track right now to their science goals? It's saying that 75% across the board are their goals. Does it look like they're on track to their science goals? So we'd want to know, if you're not on track, what are you going to do about it? What's the deal? Do you have all the information you need? Is there anything else? Do you have resources that you need for us to work on? Because both you as a board member have due diligence processes and things like you have to know enough what's going on in the school, but you also have a resource acquisition role as well, right? You can help. If there's something that the principal or the teachers need in science, if it's microscopes, we can work on getting microscopes. I would be cautious to let it go to that simple issue. Like, I don't think microscopes is getting you 11%. And let's take a look at number 4, the last one. Now you have the second quarter. You're midway through the year. You're having your December board meeting. And this is the dashboard that is presented to you. Now we're going to start the process here, which is, first of all, are there clarifying questions about what's on the paper? Like I just don't understand what this number says or what this is. This is essentially the first quarter, how many kids passed, the second quarter, how many kids passed, and their goals. Any questions you're like, yeah. Just don't understand what the numbers mean right now. Cool? So what I want you to do is I want you to take just a couple of minutes. I want you to jot down what questions might you ask the school leader with regard to these data to gain clarity on the school's academic health. What are some questions you would ask? Remember, goals, on track to goals, course adjustment if you're not on track to goals, 3 key indicators. Let's start out there. Let's just take a couple minutes, jot down whatever questions come to mind. I think I'm going to skip the report out section because I really thought I heard some really good stuff at the tables, and I want to just skip to the role play, which is going to be me. I'm going to do the role play. I'm going to be the principal of this school that I just presented this data to you. And I'd like you to ask me questions. And I'd like you to, again, go into those 3 key indicators. Goals, progress to goal, on track to goal. If not, what are you going to do? Using that those as a framework. You're the board now. We're sitting around. It's after school. Kids are gone. I've given this to you as the academic report. And I'd like to I'll play it out. And I'll play it out for a couple of minutes. We might stop and just say, like, what are you thinking? What are you hearing? I may do it again, or we may continue the discussion depending on how it goes. But I heard some really exciting, I'll be honest with you, some just really exciting discussions around what are the questions, what are the things you would want to hear and know more about. So again, think about those things: goals, progress to goal, course correction when you're not on track. I will say to the board, so y'all had a chance to take a look at the data I gave to you. Some really interesting stuff there. I'd love to answer any questions you might have. Well, great. Okay, so let's talk about our field trips then. Come on. What are the questions you might have?
Well, you said last quarter that the science teacher just needed new microscopes. So we got new microscopes, and I'm so glad to see that it improved. But I also see that our English and math scores have been stagnant. What interventions are you going to put in place in order to increase those?
That's really good. So, as you probably remember, we have 2 first-year teachers in those classes. And so we really want to help them to get better, and we're spending all of our energy on that, and we really are confident. So,
What were the scores last year for English and math? Were they consistent?
for English and math, so yeah, I think last year we had, overall we had about, I think it was 68% of our kids got basic or above in in math, and then 65% got basic or above in English.
What did they start off with? What was the first quarter?
Pardon me?
What was the first quarter scores?
Of last year? I'd have to go back and check.
I'm wondering if this is what happens each year, regardless of what teacher it is. They all start out about 40% and just moving up to 60%.
Yeah, we usually show like improvement as the year goes along, for sure. Yeah.
What can you do to get it to 80%?
Work. So what we're really thinking about is, again, we want to just really support those teachers and make them feel like they're successful. We were able to do that with science teachers, so we really feel confident we can do that with the ELA and the math.
Do you have a plan for assessing and reporting on teachers by someone who does a walkthrough and spends at least a couple hours? And do you have team leadership in the topic area?
In the content areas? Yeah.
Content areas.
Yeah,
And
so-
and kind of not tutoring, but training teachers and
Great, yeah, that's a great question. So I'm pretty good at the ELA side of things, and I feel pretty confident about that. I do have a director of curriculum and instruction, and they're very good, and so I think they're going to work more with the math teachers. But that's a good question.
What are the supporting reasons for setting, in my personal opinion, such low intake goals?
Oh, great! That's a great question. So our goal was 75% of our kids are basic and above. We figured that was good improvement from last year, where our overall was around 68, and the interim goals are meant to sort of step up to that. So, yeah, that's the way we think about it.
How well do you feel that the interims were, or did you make the interims, or are they from the
No, we have outside sources.
Do you feel that they were aligned really well with your school's scope and sequence, or did you think there were some surprises there, maybe in math for the second time around?
Yes and no. I mean, pretty good. It was pretty good. The ANET tests are really hard though, but they're good. You know, they get us ready for the test. So.
Do you have, so I noticed you say you have 2 new teachers, and my question is, I guess, a 2-part question, but do you have more veteran teachers who are mentoring some of the younger teachers, and also do you have a plan for, I guess, continuous training for teachers who don't meet minimum goals?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So we don't really think about it that way. We do have a master teacher who's a more veteran teacher who helps with folks. Her background is in science, and so I think she's been really able to help with the science teacher. But Again, I'm working mostly with the ELA teachers, and the director of curriculum instruction is working more with the math teachers. So I'm going to time out. 3 key indicators: goals. How aware am I of our goals? How aware am I on track to goals or not? And how am I in terms of course correction? What's your just general sense about like what I'm talking about and
You
what I'm
haven't
saying?
said how you're gonna fix it.
Okay.
All you've done is basically tell us why the problem is there, but I don't see any correction, any plan for correction.
You just said the ANET tests were just, they're good, yeah, they're good. They didn't mean anything.
Something you said for my question is that you said you have a master teacher who's real good in science, real good in ELA, but you didn't mention anything about social studies or I guess math. So you didn't touch on who might be helping those teachers for those areas.
Why did you pick those subjects, by the way? Why did you say social studies and math?
And so I picked them because you told me that I think that the master teacher
Works with science. You know?
science, right, and you work with ELA. So the two other ones that were missing were those 2 subjects.
Do you feel this school is on track to Disney World or not? How many of you say it's on track? Raise your hand.
I'm thinking of Gulf Shores.
Not on track. Raise your hand. You had a comment? I'm sorry.
No, I thought you were Gulf Shores.
So
Kids aren't.
the question is that if that happens, what do you all do? You're board members. Your school is not on track to success right now. Right? You can't go in and teach the classes. You can't be the principal, most likely. Maybe somebody could, but like in essence, you're not. That's not your job. You're not hired to be the teacher. You're not hired to be the principal. But you are hired to vet my plan, and really, you have a responsibility to the kids in those schools if they're going to get smarter, to ensure that plan at least makes sense. So what you're telling me right now is you don't think this school is on track to its goals. Do you think I'm course adjusting, making the necessary changes that need to take place? What do you think?
Having given us enough information to form that opinion.
Okay, tell me more.
Yeah.
What would you need?
I guess more concrete. I mean, you sound like the debates that we just got through, suffering through for 6 months, but not really saying a lot of things without saying anything.
Gotcha.
So, tell us what you're going to do to make these subjects reach the goals that they did not reach at A2. How are you going to get them to reach the goals at A3? And give us something definitive. I mean, what are you going to do?
Yep.
What procedures do you have in place to help reach those goals?
Well, and so I think my answer kind of piggybacks off his answer, but I would ask you is how much time in weeks is it from, let's say, A2 to A3? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? And if you tell me, well,
It's usually about 6 or 8 weeks, but we'll tell
Okay.
you 2 months.
okay, all right, 2 months. So in that case, how I would ask you is if it's, let's say, 8 weeks, then can you give an interim report? So weekly or bi-weekly, can you give me a report before we even hit the 8? So before we get to 8 weeks, and then we come back and say, well, look, Q3 we still low. Can you possibly check in with us every bi-weekly? Look, we're taking this corrective action. So every 2 weeks, we should grow in these small increments. By A3, we should be very close to our 50% goal.
So what I hear people saying is you want to have confidence that I know what this data is saying, I know where the gaps are, and I have a plan to take care of it, and I can let you know about it. That's essentially it. And I want to be honest, I don't want to be disrespectful to our school leaders. Look, I was a principal. I work with principals every day. These are incredibly hardworking men and women who work with teachers, are incredibly hardworking. I'm playing a little bit of the fool here, so I don't want you to sort of think that this is how most principals would act in front of their boards. In fact, contrary to it. I think you raised the point, like the data is even a little confusing, even the way it's presented is meant to be a little confusing. That being said, that is your role as a board member. Do you know if the school is on track to their goals? And if it's not, what questions do you have to ask in order to figure out whether the leader is going to get the school back on track? That's it. I mean, that is your role. And if it means submit to the board the 3-point plan, the 6-point plan, what are you going to do? Maybe I'm just not good at talking in front of you. Maybe I have it all in writing and I can give it to you. Maybe there's more context that you can know. Maybe there's ways you can help. But if you don't think, if you don't have this information, if you don't ask these questions, you can't know. And all of a sudden, at the end of the year, you're looking in the newspaper, and the school whose board you're on is failing, whose AP pass rates went down. Those are things that you would want to know way in advance, so that you can help, but also put pressure and put accountability on the leader to do the things that need to be done.
Although if you're using SAT, ACT, AP, there's only one shot for this.
No, there are actually there are
There are
assessments.
interims?
Yeah, there are interims for ACT. We have those actually. You are right though. You can, so for the outcome of a school, the ACT now that's being taken in March is the only one that counts to SPS. So that is true. But there are actually assessments that can help predict how well you're going to do. And in fact, many of our schools will take ACTs in the fall and again in the winter to have a sense of growth. But there's actually not even just taking the ACT. There's like little mini tests that you can give.
If, as volunteers for a board, who do we report to and who ultimately makes a decision about, because the school leader isn't just answering to us, is it the CEO that's always going to be the president of the board, or is it someone else?
It just depends. I mean, there's so many structures. I mean, you probably know better than me in terms of structures, but I've seen so many different structures.
There's 5 different types of charters. We could start there. So I think it depends. If you're part of a standalone school, then the school leader is actually reporting to the board of directors, like your liability insurance, like the buck stops with the board. If you're part of a charter management group, then there might be a CEO or president of the board. Then it's like all the configurations are different depending on the type of school.
And so this is more data like as if I was the principal reporting to an independent board that has one school, is not a large CMO. You could have a CEO who's making a similar presentation across 5 schools. Ultimately, there are 3 key questions that you want to start out with. What are the goals for your schools? Where are they to those goals? What are you going to do if they're not on track? Like that's it. And then your brain, your logic, that's what you're there for. You represent the public, the taxpayers of Orleans Parish, but most importantly, and I'm a taxpayer in Orleans Parish, so that's really important to me, but most importantly, you represent the life paths of the children in that school. So if you can't at least have that information, then I can't see how as a board member you're going to be truly knowledgeable. That being said, remember, there's still all this other stuff, right? And maybe you can't involve yourself in every one of those things. Maybe there's one aspect of it that you really is dear to your heart, and it's the school that called to you. You know, Ben Franklin has a sort of a focus on math science, and so maybe that's what brings people who are board members there. There are other schools that have, like Pride has a sort of a focus on healthy eating and that side. So maybe that's something that you really also want to keep constant tabs on. But ultimately, schools are there to make kids smarter, and so those are the 3 key questions you would want to be able to answer at any time. I think we're going to leave it at that. The data itself, what's on that chart, I wouldn't even worry about that. Like, hopefully you would be presented a lot better information in a lot clearer method. But I think that's a good way to start thinking about it. Yes.
How do you know that the information you're getting is accurate?
I don't know. How do you know that? That might be a good question. Where is this information coming from? The question of what kind of tests are given. Are they teacher created? That's why actually sometimes people will say, well, here are the grades, like here's the average GPA averages. That's useful at some level, particularly at high schools, it's somewhat useful. But we also wonder, there's large variation between grades that any individual teacher will give across courses. But that's a great question to ask, right? Yes, sir.
You see, what are some of the popular, I guess, resources a principal would ask a board member?
Same goal every year. I had like internal goals where things could move around, but that was my ultimate goal. Now, if a school is starting from a complete failure? Are they going to get to 200 in 4 or 5 years? Probably not. But I would say, are they on track to keep pushing higher and higher? That's the ultimate question. So I can't tell you that this is the right number. Is rigorous the same as realistic? That's a gray area that you have to work out as a member of the board, and just you're vetting it. You're not even really setting it. You're just saying that is the principal telling me something that makes sense? Is the CEO saying this is what we want and will it happen? The other big question actually on a board is what happens when those goals aren't met. And I don't get into that. That's not my role. That's not my job. That's not the idea of tonight. But I think you do need to start thinking about that too, because ultimately one key aspect of charters is that there's accountability. In the end, if kids aren't getting smarter, something has to happen.
Well, I guess at some point you just question, the first question is this goal the right goal?
That's a great question. Sure. Is it a reasonable yet rigorous goal? That's the first one.
And I guess the other thing is, to what extent you can expect improvement every year. I mean, that's sort of what I struggle with.
There's no perfect answer on that one. Because there's going to always be a dip. Which again, are you going to fire a principal if they have 1 year where the school doesn't do as well?
Or does it keep getting, I guess where I'm
Doesn't keep getting better. Yeah. Great question. Well, on this fine note, guys, I'd like to say thank you. I appreciate your time.